Chapter 2: The Making of a Soldier. Throughout my stay at Federal Government College Sokoto, I gave so much thought to my career plans. I constantly asked myself what I was going to be when I graduated from this school. It was clear to me that whatever I was going to become depended on my academic achievements, so I buried myself in my books and studied very hard. As I gave more thought to my career plans, my focus began to shift to the army. As time went on, instead of asking myself what I was going to be, I thought more about life as a soldier. By this time, my interaction with the army had been confined to soldiers who used to come home on holiday or camping exercises along the way. Whenever I ran into soldiers on field exercise, I mused about the prospect of becoming one of them. What I admired the most was the order and neatness that I saw in a soldier. In fact, it was easy to identify soldiers just by the way they conducted themselves. Even the way they walked along the streets differentiated them. Their countenance projected that they lived as though nothing else existed except them. It was not arrogance, but a sense of pride in their profession. This was the sort of life that I wanted for myself. The army had an appeal, perhaps a fascination for me, as it did most of my contemporaries. It was while I was at Federal Government College Sokoto during my higher school education that I took the examination to attend the Nigerian Defense Academy NDA Kaduna, as at that time only one course of the NDA had graduated. Joining the army was my decision. In our days, fathers hardly knew what their children did. Whenever I came home on holidays, they made me help out in the house, work on farms, and doing whatever jobs they asked me to do. They did not know much about school activities beyond what I told them. It was up to me to tell them my plan and how I intended to pursue my goals. When I told my father that I had decided to join the army, he betrayed no visible emotion. He was neither surprised nor disappointed. He simply, in his usual calm manner, wished me well and gave me some advice. His main concern was to ensure that whatever I did, I should carry with me the values of honor, respect, and integrity that he had so strongly emphasized during my years under his watch. Again, joining the army was nothing unusual among my people. In my area, you could hardly find a family without children in the military. For a variety of reasons, my people, the thieves, had difficulty securing employment either in the government or private business institutions. Joining the army was the only option open to us to find employment, so we joined the army in droves. At the time I joined the army in 1967, Nigeria was in the throes of a civil war. Soldiers were engaged in a ferocious battle to keep Nigeria together and to prevent the disintegration of the nation. Soldiers took on a more visible and prominent role in that struggle. Many people worried about the outcome of that war and whether a military leader could find the right solution to the country's nagging questions. In all, soldiers on both sides were fighting and dying as all political options to end the conflict failed. The danger of soldiering was all too obvious for all to see. I was excited at the prospect of becoming a part of the institution on whose shoulders lay the responsibility of preserving the nation. My spirits were very high when on August 21st, 1967, my parents saw me off at the local motor park to travel to Kaduna to attend the Nigerian Defense Academy and begin a new life, one that would be my lot for the next 33 years. I arrived Kaduna in the mid-afternoon of September 2nd, 1967, excited that my childhood dream of becoming a soldier was finally within reach. But venturing into a new environment was a little bit disconcerting, perhaps intimidating. A part of me was nervous because I did not know what to expect. The officials met us with a set of uniforms and gave us the routine instructions. Located in the southwest of Kaduna, the Nigerian Defense Academy was magnificent in layout and serene. The Nigerian Defense Academy is today one of the finest military institutions in Africa. It has played a leading and conspicuous role in the training of soldiers in Nigeria and indeed beyond. It has admirably readjusted to the political and social changes in the country and has risen above the ethnic and religious tension in the country. How the Nigerian Defense Academy came to this position of preeminence is traceable to its history. The Nigerian Defense Academy was decided to be the monument of Nigeria's independence, fully capable of training members of the armed forces. Everything about the NDA was a model of order and discipline. The idea of a defense academy was impressive, both in aspiration and ambition. For more than 4 decades, the NDA has stood a symbol of unity and self-sufficiency in a nation surfeited by ethnic tension and civil unrest. The NDA has been particularly successful at keeping politics away from its campus. The best part of the NDA for me was that it trained me to be a man and an independent thinker. It trained me to fend for myself. Life at the academy was extremely regimented, and were forced under threat of punishment to comply with all the rules and regulations. Anybody who aspired to be a soldier had to learn to live by rules. And there were all kinds of rules, ranging from dress code to table manners. The NDA imbued us with a sense of responsibility that has endured in me till this day. The instructions provided us with the tools to survive and succeed in a forever changing society. At the academy, I came to appreciate the value of education. I was able to resolve old controversies and lingering doubts about life, tradition, and cultural ethos. I was able to appreciate my place and role in life. Education enabled me to gain a better understanding of who I was, where I had come from, and where I wanted to go. In the end, education enabled the poor kid from a remote village in Benue State to choose a career path that led to the rank of 3-star general and the position of Chief of Army Staff. The first few weeks were challenging as well as exciting. Rigorous physical training that tested the limits of one's endurance, combined with sound academics, made the NDA an inspiring place to be. The essence of such training was to separate the lily-livered, timid souls and cowards from the brave and courageous, the qualities that distinguish soldiers from ordinary mortals. They trained us not to only endure hardship, but to thrive in it. My instructors repeatedly emphasized that the primary mission of a soldier was to get into harm's way and achieve predetermined objectives. That demands toughness, resilience, and courage. Burned into our psyches was the need to pay meticulous attention to details. Any false move or deviation from training could prove fatal. At that impressionable young age, we soaked in everything they said and carried out their instructions. As Ecomon Commander, my training at NDA came in handy. At the NDA, we were trained by some of the finest minds in the art of warfare. By the time we got there, the second course was in training and we were the third course. We had the attention of Indian instructors and they knew everybody by name and insisted on imparting military discipline. They were very tough and paid meticulous attention to detail. Failing to obey rules was a very serious matter at the academy. The instructors were all over us and knew what each of us was doing. Nothing escapes their watchful eyes. As a cadet, I endured more punishment than any other cadets. We experimented at violating the rules to see if we could be caught. Most of the time we were caught and sure enough paid for it. I must commend the Indian military team of instructors at NDA. They took their jobs seriously. Whatever we achieved in life is a credit to the training we received from the Indian instructors at the NDA in Kaduna. I will tell you that from a professional point of view, in the conventional training and warfare, India is one of the best nations to model. Though Nigeria was colonized by the British, our operations are more aligned with the Indian approach. India, unlike the United States and Britain, places a tremendous premium on the ability to move on the ground. We do not have the luxury of overwhelming air power, so maneuvering the infantry and working to outwit the enemy to achieve target objectives are exactly what the Indians taught us. One of the instructors who left an indelible impression in my mind was Major Natu. He pushed us to be the best and spared no effort in inculcating the right values and training. Despite my boyhood pranks, I was intrigued by the theories of warfare. Studying these theories enabled me to grasp the details necessary for me to succeed. My craving for knowledge was inexhaustible. The more they impacted, the more I wanted to know. The Nigerian Defense Academy changed me, and indeed most of my course mates, with almost molecular thoroughness. The instructors reached our inner souls and forever changed our views, perception, outlook, and orientation. Everything had to be viewed through the prism of the military. My hard work and diligence paid off. On March 14, 1970, I graduated from the NDA with flying colors and was commissioned as a second lieutenant. I was posted to the 2nd Infantry Division, Benin City, from where I was posted to the 9th Infantry Battalion, Agbo. Over the years and in the course of my 31 years service in the army, I had the opportunity to travel all over the country and even the world. During my trips, I preached to all those who cared to listen that the army is one of the best things that had happened to me. I doubt if any other institution would have taken a poor teenager from Teador without significant social connection and develop and train him the way the army had developed and trained me. My journey from the sleepy and dusty village of Teador to the flagship house bears eloquent testimony to the army's capacity to invest in the training of young minds that show commitment and dedication to the ideals of the military. My first military posting after I reported to 9th Infantry Brigade was 92nd Battalion in Umunede. I arrived at my new position in my new military uniform with the insignia of a lieutenant. I was shown to my office by the adjutant, who then took me to meet my commanding officer, Captain Usayo. After the necessary military pleasantries, my new commanding officer gave me my first assignment and wished me well. I saluted and left the office. When I arrived back at my desk, a certain sense of responsibility overcame all my other emotions. It suddenly dawned on me that I was no longer a child and a free spirit. I no longer had the luxury of indulging in boyhood pranks. A new vista of life also brought with it some awesome responsibility for the welfare and the safety of my subordinates. My first priority was no longer sorting through the labyrinth of NDA rules and testing the limits of power to see how much I could get away with. I now had a new life and a new assignment, one that will ultimately be my lot for the next 31 years. I held the following positions in the army: second in command and later commanding officer, 2nd Infantry Battalion in Umundede from 1970, deputy commandant, 3rd Division Infantry School, Zaria, 1970 to 1972, commanding officer, 3rd Infantry Battalion, Ikotesen, 1973 to 1974, chief instructor, Nigerian Military School, Zaria, 1974 to 1976, commanding officer, 45th Infantry Battalion, 1976, commanding officer, 1st Infantry Battalion, Nigerian Army, 1976 to 1977, commandant, 2nd Division School of Infantry, Aganabode, 1978 to 1980, General Staff Grade 1 Training, Army Headquarters, 1981 to 1983, Commander 2nd Amphibious Brigade, 1984 to 1986, Commander 7th Mechanized Brigade, 1986 to 1987, Colonel Administration and Quartering, 1st Mechanized Infantry Division, Nigerian Army, 1987 to 1989, Commander Command Army Records, 1990, Commander 3rd Motorized Brigade, Nigerian Army Depot, 1991, Nigerian Contingent Commander, Chief of Staff, Director of Operations, ECOMOG in Liberia, 1992 to 1993, Directing Staff, National War College, 1993, Deputy Commandant, National War College, 1993 to 1994, General Officer Commanding 82nd Division, Nigerian Army, 1994 to 1996, Force Commander, ECOMOG, Liberia, 1996 to 1997, General Officer Commanding 2nd Mechanized Infantry Division, 1997, Commander, Lagos Garrison Command, 1998 to 1999, and finally Chief of Army Staff, 1999 to 2001. I also received the following awards and medals: Commander of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, CFR, Distinguished Service Order, DSO from the Republic of Liberia, Defense Service Medal, National Service Medal, Republic Service Medal, National Service Medal, Silver Service Medal, Force Service Medal, Meritorious Service Star, and the Distinguished Service Star. Life as a soldier fascinated me. In the army, I found my niche and I rediscovered myself. I found a home and a sense of importance, and above all, a satisfying life. I've always been drawn to a life of service, commitment, and standing for something more than self. Naturally, therefore, the Army's regimented life, discipline, order, and structure excited me. Equally exciting was the well-starched and well-pressed military uniform. Putting on my uniform made me feel good. The Army enabled me to live out my boyhood dreams and fantasies. The Army provided a platform for me to pursue a career and undertake a journey to manhood. I can say without any hesitation that I found real fulfillment both professionally and personally in the Army. God may have singled me out for a special favor and cast his banner of protection over me as I navigated the difficult and often treacherous terrain on my way to the top. Right from the time I joined the Army, I believed that I had the temperament, ability, and discipline to make it to the top. My intense desire to become a career soldier and attain the rank of general obscured any other goals, including political appointments. Like many others before me who attained the rank of general in the Army, I disassociated myself from anything that would prevent me from achieving my goal. That meant keeping my distance from ambitious officers who wanted power and the spoils that went with it. It also meant burying myself in the ideals and traditions of the military. I trained hard, attended all necessary courses, both at home and abroad, and did all that was required of me by my superiors. Every failed coup attempt ignited my impulse and renewed my determination to stay focused on my military assignments. My journey to the top was very engaging but challenging. Soldiering was second nature to me, and I instinctively assimilated the military values and ethos. I diligently and skillfully executed all lawful orders and assignments given to me. One thing I was unprepared for, however, was the politics of the institution. Politics that got more difficult as I rose higher in the rank. I also made great friends and learned a lot from my superiors who generously permitted me to benefit from their wealth of experience and wisdom. One officer who stands out is the late General Musa Yaradua, in whom I found a consummate soldier, my hero, my commander, and more importantly, a decent human being. He represented everything good about mankind. He was smart, intelligent, and cared deeply about his soldiers. General Musa Yaradua, then a major, was my first brigade commander. His style was tough love laced with kindness and discipline. His overarching concern was the welfare of his troops. The way he handled our brigade made us feel that we were members of a family. More than a military commander, he was like a father, moved by paternal instincts to guide and nurture young soldiers. An officer could not get married without clearance from him. If one of us wanted to buy a car, he would look at the car, and if it was good enough for the soldier's level, he would pay half of the price. I thought the Army was the greatest thing in life when I met him. I served under some people I wish I had never met in my life, but that gave me the opportunity to compare commanders. I felt so bad when General Musa Yaradua was appointed the Chief of Staff Supreme Headquarters because I knew that the political climate would take him away from the Army. Another officer who influenced me was General T.Y. Danjuma. He was one of the greatest soldiers of his generation. Most soldiers were fascinated and indeed mesmerized by General Danjuma. I served under him in Port Harcourt as a captain. General Danjuma was unique amongst his contemporaries in stressing discipline and fidelity to the military code of conduct. He did not fall for the temptation of politics. He showed courage, resilience, and strength of character in all his endeavors. Everyone around him knew what he expected, and we did our best not to fail him. General Danjuma, without saying a word, made junior officers around him buy into his philosophy and outlook on life. Soldiering, he made us believe, was the most important profession in the world, and to be a soldier, you had to give it your all. Watching him go about his normal duties made us believe that attaining a superior rank in the Army was not only achievable but important. Anybody who wanted to be a general in the Nigerian Army had to model his conduct after General T.Y. Danjuma. I committed an act which, had he found out, would have attracted severe consequences. I was shortlisted to attend the interview to serve as an aide-de-camp ADC and I went into hiding. I could not imagine myself hanging around somebody as an ADC. I thought it was demeaning and a waste of my time. Luckily, he did not find out that I deliberately avoided serving as an ADC. General Oluleye was an image of honesty, transparency, and holiness. He exuded the confidence and dignity of a well-trained officer. He was smart, articulate, and enormously sure of himself. He was my general officer commanding GOC in 2nd Division after the late General Jalo. He fundamentally changed the way the division conducted its affairs. He insisted on probity and accountability and erected a solid wall against corruption and laxity. He had an encyclopedic knowledge of the military rules and regulations and insisted that everyone under his command adhered to the rules. We wanted his attention and approval and did all that he expected, perhaps to make him proud of us and even more importantly to advance our careers. He was a model of professionalism and probity who brought sanity to his division, especially after the fraud and laxity resulting from the Civil War. Within the first 6 months of assuming office, more than 50 officers and soldiers were jailed for financial fraud. I admired him greatly because he was the type of officer I wanted to serve with. Unfortunately, he took an early retirement. When he retired, there was a feeling, perhaps a dreaded realization, that the army would never see his like again. General Ibrahim Babangida was another officer who stood out in my mind. I served with him in the army headquarters when he was the director of staff duties and plans. One of the most brilliant minds I would ever meet. General Babangida had so much charm and magnetism around him. A debonair soldier, General Babangida had a smile for everyone around him and exuded self-confidence. He was suave, gracious, and made every one of us feel very comfortable around him. At the time, we all thought he had something most of us did not have. His office was the busiest in the army headquarters because he was involved in the policies of the army and went out of his way to guide and direct junior officers. He knew every officer by name and would always make time to chat with us. He would ask after our welfare and ask about our wives by their first names. Such qualities endeared him to most soldiers. Most of us were mesmerized by General Babangida, his pleasant disposition, his professionalism, and uncommon ability to know all officers by name and make them feel comfortable. This endeared him to junior officers. He was a senior officer, a major general who took time out of his busy schedule to exchange pleasantries with young officers and inquire about their well-being. Nothing was more endearing than having a senior officer call you by name and ask after your wife by her first name. It made us feel good about ourselves, and we cherished every moment we were in his presence. General Babangida was liked not only because he made us feel comfortable around him, but also because we all knew that he was a solid professional and a decent human being. To most of us, General Babangida was one of the finest the army, even mankind, had to offer. He represented everything good about the army and even mankind. His pleasant disposition invited corresponding affection from fellow soldiers, especially the younger ones. It is no surprise that loyalties to him within and outside the armed forces run very deep. This much I know of the general as a military officer and not more. My family. I had learned from my father the value of family, the joy of a good wife, and the blessings of raising children, and I had always wondered what family life would be like for me. If I could give my children half of the love, support, and encouragement I had received from my parents, I would go down as one of the best fathers in Nigeria. I also knew that my prospects of becoming a good father depended on the kind of wife I married. I knew exactly the kind of woman I wanted for a wife. She had to be like my mother, kind, gentle, and focused with a strong sense of family. I was determined to wait as long as it took to find her. Waiting was not particularly easy. I was a single young army officer in an era and in an environment that celebrated, even adored soldiers. Young girls found great value in dating army officers. There was no evidence that soldiers were opposed to the idea of being the cynosure of adoring female eyes. Like most officers, I had my fair share of admirers and did what most officers did to please them. During weekends and on my off days, I partied with fellow officers frequently, most times in the company of beautiful women. I would rather not describe myself as a Casanova, but I quickly terminated relationships with girls who did not meet my standards. I've always been true to myself in all my dealings with human beings. I did not want to lead anybody on. I was looking for true friendship and genuine affection, and was therefore not interested in furtive sex. I was very prudish in sexual matters and was driven by the desire to find a good woman. I was after all searching for a life partner, somebody who would treat and respect me the way my mother treated and respected my father. I also knew that I needed divine intervention to find the right one, given the number of women who did everything possible to win my affection. Some women liked us for whom we were, others saw us as potential and future leaders who could one day become military governors or even presidents of Nigeria. It was not always easy to decipher the motives or agendas of those women. I prayed constantly to God to give me the wisdom to choose the right wife. In 1974, 4 years after my commission, my search came to an end. I ran into Esther. From the moment I met her, I knew she was the woman I wanted for a wife. She was guarded and even somewhat reticent at first, but she finally let down her guard and overwhelmed me with her charm, affection, and charisma. She later confided in me that she had initially been cautious with me because of the reputation of young army officers. She had to make sure that I was different from others and that I was actually serious as I seemed. In Esther, I found a partner whose enthusiasm for life matched my own. We shared the same values and interests. We were immensely excited about sharing our lives. In 1976, we got married and were blessed with our first child, Ngwevisi, in the same year. I have found marriage immensely fulfilling and abundantly rewarding over the years. I have received great emotional support from my wife, who has never wavered in her love and encouragement. She has always been the fountain of inspiration and bedrock of my support whenever it mattered. Any soldier will tell you that a good wife makes it easier for soldiers to discharge their duties. I was lucky to have a good wife who cheerfully took care of the home front during my long absences. My frequent transfers and deployment became part of her life, and she found creative ways to make the best out of her situation. She made sure the children were all right and raised the way we had planned. Her counsel, companionship, and love enabled me to have a fulfilled career and a balanced family life. As we moved from town to town and from state to state, my wife and the children were forced to readjust to new environments and make new friends every few years. We have 4 kids, 1 girl and 3 boys, Ngwevisi, Tarumun, Ajiva, and Teve. We try to raise them to be independent human beings and free thinkers. I let them make their own decision with little or no interference. My wife and I made a decision early on not to live our lives through our children. I have heard stories about parents choosing careers for their children, not in my house. The best we did was to review their plans and options and offer suggestions. The call was theirs to make, and we respected whatever they chose, even if we might have preferred something else. For example, most officers would like to have their sons join the army to continue the family tradition. I was no exception. I secretly prayed that one of my sons would join the army. I looked forward to the day when one of my boys would walk into my room to announce his intention to join the army. That day came in 1996 when my first son, Tarumun, announced his intention to join the army. It was the decision he had made on his own without any prodding from either me or my wife. He is now a major in the Nigerian army. The other 3 children have chosen to pursue careers outside the army. My daughter Ngwevisi, Brenda, is a businesswoman and a wonderful mother to my 2 beautiful granddaughters. My second son, Ajiva, is a businessman, and our last child, Teve, is a media entrepreneur. From the rigors of the Nigerian Defense Academy, through the battlefields of Liberia and Sierra Leone, up to the intrigues of being the Chief of Army Staff, the most exhilarating assignment in my life has been parenting. Raising children presents complex sets of problems. Once you walk through the doors of your house, no matter the number of stars you have on your shoulder, The accolades and honors you have achieved, you are simply known as Daddy. You have to deal with the challenges all by yourself. There's no aide de camp or military support staff. You are now on your own, supported by your wife. You must deal with children who are often as determined as you to have their way all the time. The Bible tells us that children are like arrows in the hands of the parents. They depend on you for guidance, support, love, and nourishment. How they turn out is often a reflection on the parents, so you do everything humanly possible to guide them right. I had two good things going for me as I launched into the enterprise of parenting. First, my parents had served as good role models. If I could be as good as parents as my parents were, I stood a good chance of raising good kids. Second, I had a good wife, a worthy companion who was as determined as I was to give our children the best. For the most part, we were in it together as a team, complementing each other. Even in my absence, I was sure that my wife was more than equal to the task. My wife has turned out to be a marvelous mother who knows how to manage a family. Though my principal concern was for my immediate family, I had to take care of my mother and siblings. I had promised my father that I would carry the mantle of leadership in the family, and I cared for the family the way he did. I was responsible for the education of my siblings. Most went to school very late. As soon as I could, and from my meager earnings as a young officer, I asked them to go to school. It was very hard on me in the early years, but I shouldered the responsibility with joy. In addition to fulfilling the promise I had made to my father, I was also making it possible for my siblings to be independent. They all turned out well and are now productive and responsible members of society. My immediate junior, Tabitha Malu, died in 2002, while Jasper Malu died in 2001. Aka Malu is a businessman in Zakibiam, and my mother's last child, Seina Malu, is a brigadier general in the army. I must stress that he joined the army out of his own volition and free will. I neither persuaded nor encouraged him to follow in my footsteps. Apparently, he liked what he saw in his big brother and decided to be a soldier, and a damn good one for that matter.